When some 16 years of age, because of the spirit of defiance I evinced towards my condition of servitude, I had been lent by my then master, Mr. Ald, to a Mr. Covey, an overseer much sought after in the area around Eastern Maryland as a Negro breaker. Any cruelties and indignities that you entertain to have been practiced upon the slave, you must multiply tenfold to understand how this Mr. Covey gained and maintained his reputation. After a particularly brutal savaging by Covey, I had absconded back to my master, pleading protection from the Negro breaker, only to be met with cold refusal of mercy and to be sent back to my tormentor. Let me share with you now the events of the last attempt to flog me and of my first freedom of spirit. Long before daylight, I was called up to feed, rub, and curry the horses. I obeyed the call, as I should have done had it been made at an earlier hour, for I had brought to my mind to a firm resolve during that Sunday's reflection to obey every order, however unreasonable, if it were possible, and if Mr. Covey should then undertake to beat me, to defend and protect myself to the best of my ability. And when I was in the act of going up the stable loft for the purpose of throwing down some hay, Covey sneaked into the stable in his peculiar way, and seizing me suddenly by the leg, he brought me to the stable floor. The brute was skillfully endeavoring to get a slip knot on my legs before I could draw up my feet. As soon as I found what he was up to, I gave a sudden spring. My 2 days' rest had been much service to me, and by that means he was defeated in his plan of tying me. And while down, he seemed to think he had me very securely in his power. He little thought he was, as the rowdies say, in for a rough and tumble fight. But such was the fact. Whence came the daring spirit necessary to grapple with the man who 8 and 40 hours before could with his slightest word have made me tremble like a leaf in a storm? I do not know. At any rate, the fighting madness had come upon me, and I found my strong fingers firmly attached to the throat of the tie, as heedless of consequences at the moment, as if we stood as equals before the law. The very color of the man was forgotten. I felt supple as a cat and was ready for him at every turn. Every blow of his was parried, though I dealt no blows in return. I was strictly on the defensive, preventing him from injuring me rather than trying to injure him. I flung him to the ground several times when he meant to have held me there. I held him so firmly by the throat that his blood flowed my nails. He held me and I held him. All was fair thus far, and the contest was about equal. My resistance was entirely unexpected, and Covey was taken all aback by it, and he trembled in every limb. "Are you going to resist, you scoundrel?" said he, to which I returned a polite, "Yes, sir," steadily gazing my interrogator in the eye, but the conflict did not long remain equal. Covey soon cried lustily for help because he was not able, single-handed, to conquer me. He called for his cousin Hughes to come to his assistance, and now the scene was changed. I was compelled to give blows, as well as to parry them, and since I was in any case to suffer for resistance, I felt, as the musty proverb goes, I might as well be hanged for an old sheep as a lamb. I was still defensive toward Covey, but aggressive towards Hughes, on whom at his first approach I dealt a blow which he fairly was sickened by. He went off, bending over in pain, manifesting no disposition to come again within my reach. I gave him a kick, which sent him staggering away in pain, at the same time that I held Covey with a firm hand. Taken completely by surprise, Covey seemed to have lost his usual strength and coolness. He was frightened and stood puffing and blowing, seemingly unable to command words or blows. I told him I did mean to resist, come what might. that I had been treated like a brute during the last 6 months and that I should stand it no longer. With that, he gave me a shake and attempted to drag me toward a stick of wood that was lying just outside the stable floor. He meant to knock me down with it, but just as he leaned over to get the stick, I seized him with both hands by the collar, and with a vigorous and sudden snatch, I threw my assailant his full length onto the floor. We were on the not so clear ground, for now we were in the cow yard. By this time, Bill, the hired man, came home. He had been to Mr. Helmsley's to spend Sunday with his nominal wife. Kobe, holding me, called upon Bill to assist him. The scene here had something comic about it. Bill, who knew precisely what Kobe wished him to do, affected ignorance and pretended he did not know what to do. "What shall I do, Master Kobe?" said Bill. "Take hold of him! Take hold of him!" said Kobe. With a toss of his head peculiar to him, Bill replied with spirit, "Indeed, Master Kobe, I want to go to work. My master hired me to work and not to help you with Frederick." It was my turn to speak. "Bill," I said, "don't you put your hands on me." To which he replied, "My God, Frederick, I ain't gonna touch you." And Bill walked off, leaving Kobe and myself to settle our differences as best we might. But my present advantage was threatened when I saw Caroline coming to the cowshed to milk, for she was a powerful woman and could have mastered me, easily exhausted as I was. As soon as she came near, Kobe attempted to rally her to his aid. Strangely and fortunately, Caroline was in no humor to take hand in any such sport. We were all in open rebellion that morning. Caroline answered the command of her master to take hold of me precisely as Bill had done. Thus, at length, after 2 hours had elapsed, the contest given was over. Letting go of me, puffing and blowing at a great weight, Kobe said, "Now you scoundrel, go to your work. I would not have whooped you half as hard if you had not resisted." The fact was, he had not whooped me at all. He had not, in all the scuffle, drawn a single drop of blood from me. I had drawn blood from him. During the whole 6 months I lived with Kobe after this transaction, he never again laid the weight of his finger on me in anger. He would occasionally say he did not want to have to get hold of me again, a declaration which I had no difficulty in believing. And I had a secret feeling which answered, "You had better not wish to get hold of me again, for you will likely come off worse in a second fight than you did in the first." This battle with Mr. Kobe was the turning point in my life. As a slave, it rekindled in my breast the smoldering embers of liberty and revived a sense of my own manhood. I was a changed being after that fight. I was nothing before. I was a man now. It recalled to life my crushed self-respect and my self-confidence, and inspired with a renewed determination to be a free man. Kobe was a tyrant and a cowardly one. After resisting him, I felt as I never felt before. I had reached the point at which I was not afraid to die. This spirit made me a freeman in fact, though I still remained a slave in form. You may like to know why. After I had so grievously offended Mr. Kobe, he did not have me taken in hand by authorities. Indeed, while the law of Maryland, which assigned hanging to the slave who resisted his master, was not put in force against me, I confess that the easy manner in which I got off was always a surprise to me. the probability that Covey was ashamed to have it known that he had been mastered by a boy of 16. He enjoyed the unbound and very valuable reputation of being a first-rate overseer and Negro breaker. The story that he had been undertaken to whoop a lad and had been resisted would of itself be damaging to him in the estimation of slaveholders. It is perhaps not altogether credible to my natural temper that after this conflict with Mr. Covey, I did at times purposely aim to provoke him to an attack, but I could never bully him to another battle. Hereditary bondmen, know ye not, who would be free, themselves must strike the blow.